one of the things a lot of women in this culture, if a man doesn't shake the hand, they immediately assume, I'm unclean, the woman. Whereas a Muslim woman can't shake a male's hand. It's the same way, but the interpretation is always seen from that perspective. And this is part of the problem in our behavior as Muslims and in our articulation of our teaching, right? Is that there are gross misconceptions, not only outside of the Islamic community, but inside the Islamic community as well. And that's where a lot of the source of the problem is, that there is jahiliyyah. There is this kind of patriarchal nonsense going on that is not honoring women, right? And the tradition says, لا يكرمهن إلا كريم ولا يهينهن إلا لئيم, that only noble men honor women and only wretched men dishonor them, So, this is part of our challenge, to start changing some of these cycles, breaking, right? And I think it's possible. It just takes a lot of work and effort.
What's the meaning of afifa in English?
Afifa is Iffa is a type of, it's chastity, but it's related to, afifa is somebody who's vigilant about her honor, her name, right?
And what's the difference between that and zina?
Zina just means, it means illicit relations, whether it's adultery, which is between a married person or two married people, and fornication, which is people that aren't married. And the hadd is worse for married people, obviously, than it is for unmarried people.
Male family members, like a cousin, would the same rule apply as far as like being alone with her?
If you can marry the person, the rule applies. That's the general rule. If you can marry them, if there is a potential possibility, even if at the given point you can't marry them, but because of divorce or death you could marry them, it has the same application. So, my brother might be married to a woman, and at that time I can't marry her. But if my brother died or if my brother was divorced, then I could marry her. So in that situation, she's ajnabiyya. I can't marry her. Or my wife has a sister. I can't marry my wife's sister. But if there was a divorce or a death, then I could. So if there's either the possibility of marriage, immediate possibility, or potential possibility, then that is ajnabiyya for male and female. The male is ajnabi and the female is ajnabiyya.
If you're living in the same house.
Doesn't matter. Nope. Sharia is really strict about those things.
Like if you're living with your husband's brother, or you're living with your husband.
Bad news. Really, bad news. Arhamul maut, the Prophet said, brother-in-laws are death. It's bad news. Human beings are human beings. I guarantee you, within this culture, a lot of the stuff that goes on is, it's not Oprah Winfrey, but the other type, soap operas, these Morich Povey or whatever, these type of things. No, it's all about, brother steals, wife, right, and stuff like that. And it's all because of these type close intimacies. It happens all the time in this culture, things like that. And most of the illicit relationships happen in workspaces. In other words, here's a woman or a man who's, he's been married 7 or 8 years, getting kind of quote unquote boring. They call it 7-year itch. And he's working, and he's got this woman he's working with, and she's really interesting. They have really interesting conversations, and he's thinking, why can't I have a conversation like this with my wife? And then, or maybe she's never been married before, and the wife's had 2 or 3 children. She doesn't look as good as she did when he first married her, right? And this woman, she looks really good, and this is how it all happens, Or the woman says, "This guy's so much more interesting than my husband," or he pays attention to me. Like I was on the airplane and there was this woman with her husband was sitting across from me, and they had a couple kids, and he was reading. He was an MD, and he was reading a magazine about football, and then he'd been reading it for half the flight. So she says to him, "Is the magazine good? Do you like it? Sweetheart?" Blah, blah, blah. And he's just. So I think she said it again, no response, and I just looked at her and I said, "My wife hates when I do that, And she said, "You just get used to it, right?" My wife actually counts because I have this kind of delayed, my reticular formation picks up after about 10 seconds. So she'll ask me a question when I'm reading, and then she'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for about 10 seconds I'll say, "Oh, I think this or that," and she just shakes her head.
In this culture to shake hands with a man, since in this culture that's just
Well, see, that's an example of urf that goes against the Sharia. Yeah.
What's the question?
You're not supposed to shake hands with people. That is the hukam, and sometimes, that's a really difficult one. Just sometimes, because it's almost like it's become spontaneous, it's just, and it's really hard to, somebody puts their hand right in front of your hand. And I had one of my sheikhs, who has a lot of taqwa, but he had to go, he went on this, he was sent by the government to Russia, and he went to, I think, Kazakhstan or one of Kazakhstan, I think, and he was really bothered by the protocol and things like that, because he was representing the United Arab Emirates, so there's diplomatic concerns and things. But he when he got to Kazakhstan, when they came out, they were shaking the hands, and he came to the wife of the president, and his hand was there, and she just went like this, like, "I can't shake your hand." So it was he said it was a big shock for him, just to kind of, he said, "Astaghfirullah," that the woman didn't want to shake his hand because she was a Muslim.
What do you do in that situation? Because there was a situation
That's a big problem, and I think the most important thing is to try to explain. It could actually become an opportunity for da'wah. I don't think you have to go into the fact, well, did you know that sexual pheromones are transmitted through touch and things like that?
No, because there was a situation where there was a mosque and they invited the neighbors for some Eid, lunch or brunch or something, and then some of the ladies came over and she stretched out her hand to this guy, and he's like, "I can't touch you, you're a lady," and she got so offended. She got so offended. She said, "I'll never ever come to you Muslims ever. I'm never, So
it's a very sensitive issue, and I think there definitely needs to be more awareness within the community. And one of the things is, that's part of the thing about going to high schools and going to and explaining. There's opportunities like 7th grade, 9th grade, going to high schools, explaining to people and bringing up that issue.
You say that, what is the consequences? One thing, you lose your wudu. That's for sure.
If you're Shafi'i, not if you're Maliki.
But let's say you lose your wudu. This is a consequence. But what
Maliki, you don't lose your wudu.
Let's say you don't. What is the consequence of shaking? You go to hellfire right there. What are you losing by how?
It's not a major wrong action. It's not like kabira. It doesn't go under the mubiqat or the kaba'ir like that. But it's
not haram, right?
It's prohibited. There is a nahi. Yes. About the qabda. Yeah, I know. But there is a nahi, definitely. And it's taken from the ayah, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, what's called mafhum al-awla. The Quran says lower the gaze, and mafhum al-awla in tafsir is, like for instance in the Quran it says not to say to your parents, "Uff." Well, from that the scholars take that you certainly can't hit them. If you can't say "uff" to them, you definitely can't hit them, because it's mafhum al-awla. It's even something you should understand even more, that if saying oof is prohibited, then certainly to say, to hit them is prohibited. And the Quran, when it says tell them to lower the eyes, well, touch is much, it's a stronger, and that's where, and there's a sound hadith that the Prophet never once touched an ajnabiya woman, ever. Ever. He did not touch any woman that he was not directly related to or had rights over in terms of sexual rights.